Thanks. And thanks everybody for joining the presentation. I'm very happy to be able to present remotely so that I can tell you a little bit about some of the experiences that we've had within the Swiss market over the past 5 years that our company has been around, and hopefully how this parallels to this very really fascinating time that we're seeing across Europe as these markets open up for medical and THC, and of course for other cannabis products. So without further ado, please feel free to shout if for some reason the connection cuts out. But I think that we're really facing this, as I said, this really phenomenal time as these markets are really opening up for what seems like forever. We've been expecting this to happen, and it's coming now. But I think that one of the things that we must think about now are what are the risks of this opening market, and how can we avoid any of the pitfalls that are going to be coming at us as this market opens, so we can have a really successful cannabis industry within Europe. And we can luckily learn a lot from markets which are open. Markets like Canada, which legalized in 2018, there was incredible promise and incredible hype that was built up around the Canadian opening. And these phenomenally large companies were birthed out of this time, all of the names that you'll, of course, recognize. But ultimately, these companies were capitalized based on the promise of broadly markets being open across the world. And this has taken so much longer than anybody ever expected. So this has led to somewhat of a wobble for our industry in general, because we have to now contend not just with the prevailing market conditions here, but also with some of the difficulties that are being transferred onto us because of the slow start and the valuations of these Canadian companies, which are reflecting on us in some way. But that shouldn't let us hold us back, because we are our own market, where we are our own companies, and we are going to, I think, create a really vibrant and very different type of cannabis industry here in Europe, one that I'm very excited for. But there are risks, and these risks are around what is the legislative environment going to look for us here. We know, or we think we know, that Germany will provide some limits to the way that this industry opens up. Perhaps some THC content maximums for adolescents, and also holding limits. And these are things that we have to work around. However, some of these limits are actually quite good for us, I think, and create additional opportunities that we can capitalize on. Like the cannabis clubs, which are going to be probably one of the major routes of distribution of cannabis. They're going to be probably 8,000 of these clubs just to meet the projected demand that we're expecting in Germany. And this is, I think, somewhat really beneficial for our, that's very beneficial for the whole cannabis industry, because we will have diversity in producers, diversity in the varieties, diversity of what the consumers can obtain. And that diversity also gives strength. So some producers will be better than others, and this will allow us to have really great success stories, but also challenges. Distributed systems are difficult. Whereas with centralized production, problems only have to be solved once. With what we're expecting in Germany and what we're expecting across Europe, if other countries open in the same way, is that everybody will have to make the same mistakes or go through the same process over and over again for themselves. And some of these production risks that we see are everybody wants to pheno hunt for their own varieties, and often pheno hunting without other processes in place often leads to loss of those varieties over time. We've seen a lot of males and Hermes destroy entire production runs. This will happen again. Molds and mildews are far too common, and really one of the biggest risks that I see are suppliers providing inaccurate information about varieties which are on sale. And to me, this is really one of the areas that I would like to see us all focus on a lot more, is to make sure that the information on the box is correct, and especially when we're going to be working within such controlled legal environments. Of course, the health risks are obvious. When we're doing legal production of cannabis, we don't have the same freedoms as the black market has to be able to spray these products with pesticides. And that's a really good thing, but we need to manage this within the context of having these really distributed systems. Who's going to be checking up on all of this material? And what I want to avoid is that a false start in the opening of Europe leads to some bad stories and then sets back legislation by years. And it's completely unnecessary because we have all of the expertise here to be able to avoid this. So a little bit about our company and our perspective, I think, is really the way I want to bring this across. We've been in Switzerland for since 2018. Since the Canadian market opened, we've been dealing in CBD and producing flowers, and we've developed a suite of companies which cater to the entire value chain. The company that I run is Puregene. We set up to address exactly the problems that I'm talking to you about today. And this is that we were unable to get stable genetics to perform the way that we wanted them to perform within our production environments. And this led to difficulties all the way up the rest of the value chain. So I only say this because I want to bring across the point that we've made the mistakes that we are expecting to see within or across the cannabis industry. And hopefully some of our learnings can help other people as they are going into production and producing materials for patients and consumers, and that this leads to ultimately a better outcome for all of us. And it's these experiences that I think would be very valuable because what we saw in Switzerland was suddenly we had this market open. We could produce CBD flowers of up to 1% THC. And this led to this incredible boom. 700 companies started up in the space of 2 years. We know this because they're all registered with the tax authority. CBD prices at that point were 3,500 francs per kilogram of CBD flowers. And it really was a boom time, much like we're expecting for THC markets across Europe. But there were struggles with the 700 companies. Only very few were able to get their production right. And this is despite them having these phenomenal facilities and real expertise, really head growers, which are really beyond question about their abilities. And that's really the point, is that from our perspective, it doesn't matter how good or how well managed a facility is. The challenge really lies in the fact that cannabis is an unbred crop. It's not like corn or maize or soy. It hasn't had billions of dollars spent on the stabilization of varieties which can just be put in the ground and grown. It's a very different kind of animal. It's got huge diversity, which is great for the consumer and consumer choice in many occasions, but it does make it incredibly difficult to work with. So one of the things that I see a lot is when a facility decides to come online or a company decides to start. And this is, it always starts with like, finally, this is legal and let's do this, you know? And then we find out what are the restrictions, how can we work within them? That's all good. Then the equipment is on the way and the facilities are built, clients are ready and waiting. And then the last thing people think about is what are the genetics that they're going to be growing in their facilities. And then they order seeds and put them in the ground, or they order clones, and they find out like these are not performing how they want them to. These are supposed to be feminized, and they're segregating for males. It's not what I ordered, and then they have to start over all over again. And this is because the barrier to entry in cannabis is so low, and the gray zones that still exist and will exist for many years within the supply chain are so easy to work within for companies and people who maybe have less than good intentions and just want to really capitalize on this market. We see that you get huge variability in the products, and this variability is not good for anybody. And these are some of the challenges. This is really why we set up our company. And if anything else, I just want to raise awareness that genetics should be one of the earlier things that are thought about whenever people are moving into this direction. So what did we do? We decided very early that THC was going to be important. I'm sure everybody here believes that. So we started working with the federal authorities and to get our permits to be able to work with THC material. That was 4 years ago now. And we decided to set up Puregene specifically so that we could approach the breeding of cannabis really from an agricultural point of view, and not from the point of view that we had seen commonly in the industry. And this required us to really collect incredible amounts of resources in terms of the plants and the genetics that we brought into our program. We then looked at the DNA and created these nominal reference sequence genomes, which we could use in our breeding process. And I'll tell you a little bit more about these points in a little bit. But importantly for us, and importantly for what we're going to be seeing in the next few years, is that we really worked with the federal authorities here in Switzerland to be able to really understand THC material. And we did this by not only collecting material from all over the world and having permits to be able to breed with it, but also in these massive outdoor and indoor trials to be able to understand this material as best we can. And because we were working with the federal authorities, we had a bit of a revolving door so that we could inform them about the findings that we had, and they could give us the permissions to be able to generate this information that hopefully would help all of us. And in the end, this was an incredibly beneficial relationship because it allowed us to breed the material, which my colleague Mark spoke about earlier, which is the THC material that's being distributed through the Swiss pilot projects, which are the first legal recreational cannabis projects in Europe, where you move from the seed to the final product. And this in itself was a really interesting project for us, because cannabis for generations has been selected to grow in controlled environments with lighting and really good airflow, controlled day lengths. But for the Swiss pilot project, we had to work within a set of constraints. They had to be competitive with the black market, so high quality. They had to be grown under organic conditions, and they ultimately had to be something that the market desired in terms of their flavor profiles, etc. So with these constraints, we were able to select out, I think, these really amazing varieties that hopefully are going to be highly competitive with the black market, and ultimately lead to that being at least ameliorated to some point or some extent over the next few years through these projects. But we do this through generating just incredible amounts of data, and I won't dig too much into the science of what we're doing, but just to give you a sense of the scale of what we do. Through our research, we've analyzed tens of thousands of plants. This is just 1 year's field season where we had 8,000 unique plants on the left-hand side of the field here. And every single one of these is measured at 300 or more data points are created per plant, just from the characteristics of the plant, the phenotypic information. And then from there, we take each one of those plants and resequence their genome and create immense data sets on every single plant. And we track this through generations, through multiple years. So it's really a data-driven process that we have. And we were able then to kind of pull the breeding process forward and in a direction which much more closely mirrors agriculture and much less like the classic cannabis breeding or art form breeding as we refer to it. This data is very important for us because we were able to break down the plant into its individual characteristics and map these to the genome such that we can rebuild varieties using basically Lego blocks through these thousands of crosses that we perform per year. And this has led to the varieties that we distribute into the market now. But that's only one part of the story, because this approach really was geared towards a market which would be centralized, where we could go to a large licensed producer, work with them to discover what does their market want, develop plants for them, do tailored breeding, variety development, generate consumer insights, and then provide additional scientific services so that they could launch a variety which would last for decades. But that's not the way that this market is going. This market is going in a very different direction. So we then decided the best way to distribute this material is to create living catalogs. So any producer coming online can have a tailored set of plants put into their facility, which we can use to understand what performs best and take the next steps of breeding to develop varieties which are really tailored for their environment. And this has been a really successful product for us because here we are really able to give people unique varieties which are really tailored for their system and that perform well and really respond well to the conditions that they have. Whether it's in a greenhouse or outdoor or indoor, it doesn't really matter. We can develop the varieties that they need very, very quickly. But what's happening in Europe is because we have countries who really, really badly want to legalize THC for recreation, but they have their own country laws, then they have EU laws, and then they have the UN Single Convention that they need to grapple with. So I think that what's happening in Germany with these pilot or these cannabis clubs, what's happening in the Netherlands with the pilot production projects, and what's happening in Switzerland with the pilot projects that we have here, I think that these will be representative of what the condition will be for many years to come. So much more distributed, much less centralized. And that means that every one of these producers, whether it's an individual on their balcony, a club, or even something that looks more like a licensed producer, will be having very similar challenges again and again and again. So with that, we wanted to really say that we want to support this market, and we want to do it in a way that really breaks out all of the research that we've done. And I really do want this to be a situation of us telling people, these are the things that you might confront. This is where what we would do to confront these challenges. And if they want to work with us, that's great. But at least think about the challenges that you're going to be facing. And these are at every level in the supply chain. So breeders and suppliers, they're going to be faced with just sourcing material. And remember that when these markets open, they open all at once. So everybody's clamoring for whatever material is available. And to be able to get exactly the material that you need for your production facility can be difficult. So one of the things that I really want to provide to the market or provide to our colleagues is just some third-party verification. We've had so many clients come to us and say that this breeder has a fantastic variety. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to put it into production, and it's completely clean. So then we'll ask them, well, can we test it? Can we make sure that it's clean of viruses and viroids and pathogens? And we find that, of course, or in many cases, it's not. So this third-party verification, I think, is going to be very important as the market opens up, so that we can all work together to combine our skills. What we would like to do is to really support people in their own breeding efforts. Why should we be the only breeder in Europe? There are so many people who have so much experience and so much cultural knowledge about this plant, but they could be benefited by some of the technologies that we've developed. So some of these technologies are markers that can eliminate males and hermes, increase productivity, decrease or increase branching, increase the resistances of these plants. And we can do this when the plant is this big. It's just got 2 leaves. We can analyze the DNA and understand what it will display in the future. And for a classic breeder, if he has to screen through 10,000 plants to grow those in various greenhouses, could take time. If we can eliminate 90% of those plants because we know that they're not going to display the characteristics that he wants, then this makes their breeding process much more efficient. Because we have such well-characterized varieties and germplasm, we can supply traits that people could use in their own breeding process. But importantly, what our genomics allows us to do is to really show that if you are a breeder, we can test the genome of this plant. We can fingerprint it at 5,500 locations. We can prove that this variety was created by you. So we want to be able to offer that kind of security. When we're talking about producers, they need clean stock. They need to be able to store their varieties for a long time. They need to know that their material doesn't have any other intellectual property attached to it. And we want to be able to help the market here. In propagation, there's clean stock that people need to consider. So many times we've seen varieties dead out over time. And this is an incredible problem, even at the largest producers in the world. It's not just the small producers that see this. So what we would like to do is rejuvenate lots of these stocks that people have and make sure they stay clean. Mislabeling in propagation is also a huge problem because it always shows up far too late. That you see, I've generated 1,000 clones, I've filled up a greenhouse, but suddenly the plants start to look different and you can't really identify where the problem is coming from. We can go and test all those plants, run them on a genome sequencer and tell you exactly which plant is which, as just within the normal course of what we do. And then when you're looking at production and post-harvest, there's so much to think about here. Matching the genetics to your facility, doing continuous monitoring with analytics, not just on the end product, figuring out how to optimize a production facility. These are things that in a breeding environment you just see as natural. These are processes that we do every day, all the time. But we'd like to see this implemented much more broadly as this market opens up. And then at the back end, we want to work with companies and regulators to be able to make sure that all of the material is what it's what we say it is. So we can trace material through a value chain, which is so important with cannabis because there is so much diversity. And ultimately, we really just want to make sure that we provide all of the tools that we've developed to the market so that we can be successful together. I would love to see a situation where the rising tide raises all boats and we can really open this market safely, effectively, and productively. So that's me. Thanks very much.